Most people don't know that VR existed before Oculus or Apple, but it did, and there were hundreds of headsets, each with their own story and vision of what the future could be. This is the entire history of
virtual reality.
Virtual reality.
Programmers around the world experimenting with this concept call it virtual reality. Concept, programmer.
The earliest forms of virtual reality aren't even rooted in technology, but they're cerebral. Each night, as you drift off to sleep, you embark on a journey into an alternate realm, where you explore and engage with an environment that closely mimics our sensory experience of reality, the dream world. It's a cerebral simulation, and it stands as the first form of virtual reality. In ancient civilizations, like the Mesopotamians and Greeks, dreams were frequently regarded as windows to alternate realities, and gateways to other dimensions. Yet, there exists a remarkable phenomenon known as lucid dreaming, where one gains awareness within the dream and seizes control. Even ancient texts, like those of Aristotle, make reference to individuals who became conscious of their dream states. In addition to dreaming, psychedelics hold a lengthy and intricate history of personal and cultural use. These substances possess the capability to distort one's perception of reality, often described as voyages to other realms or dimensions. And then, after 300,000 years, Charles Wheatstone, a renowned English scientist and inventor, invented the stereoscope in 1838, which allowed users to view two side-by-side images at a 45-degree angle, creating a dimensional effect by presenting slightly different images on each eye. The stereoscope became a popular form of entertainment at the time. This was then followed by the Brewster Stereoscope in 1849, which added to Wheatstone's invention. Using prisms, he made a much lighter and smaller device. It also was made to be portable. Another 100 years, and we aren't much closer to creating entirely computer-simulated realities. But then came the television, and scientists were curious about using stereoscopy to enhance the experience. One of the earliest demonstrations took place in 1928 by a Scottish inventor and engineer named John Logie Baird. From a news article at the time, the device could reportedly give the appearance of solidity and depth, so that it does not look like a flat picture, but like an actual living object. The same article mentions it was like looking into the scene rather than watching. The focus was primarily on transmitting and displaying live images. The goal was to provide a real-time viewing experience that gave the illusion of depth. And then in the 1930s, the science fiction writer Stanley G. Weinbaum introduced an intriguing concept in his story, Pygmalion Spectacles. The narrative revolves around a pair of goggles that allow the user to enter and experience a fictional world through advanced holographic technology. These goggles provided complete sensory immersion, including the sense of touch, taste, and smell. The story explores the profound impact this technology has on the human experience. Improving on the stereoscope of the 1800s, the later development of the popular Viewmaster stereoscope, patented in 1939, was used for virtual tourism and introduced color. It featured 14 images on a disc, resulting in 7 3D images. You could even purchase a Viewmaster stereo camera and create your own images. I stumbled across a patent lodged by Thelma McCollum in 1945 for a stereoscopic television apparatus. It was an early semblance of virtual reality. The apparatus consisted of a spectacle frame that contained magnifying lenses, creating tubes. The invention aimed to enable multiple people to view stereoscopic television simultaneously. The cathode ray tubes in the apparatus were small and lightweight, allowing them to be mounted in the spectacle frame. And finally, after thousands of years, the birth of VR was starting to begin. The year is 1957, and a Disney employee named Morton Heilig is fed up and tired of the film industry's stagnation. He was a filmmaker and obsessed with the cinema of the future. He wanted to step into movies. He knew he had to build a device that captured all 5 senses. He worked for years and developed a groundbreaking new concept called the Sensorama, which was a large cabinet-like device that featured a stereoscopic 3D display, stereo sound, and various sensory simulations. A user would sit in front of it and be immersed in a 3D film. This is what the brochure looked like. You could buy one for $6,000 USD, which adjusted for inflation is about $67,000. It was mainly sold as an arcade machine that was coin-operated at 25 cents to use, which is the equivalent of about $3.5 today. They also aimed to sell it for educational and psychological needs. It was said to completely immerse you in the experience. You couldn't hear anything going on outside of it. Heilig designed a custom camera system called the 5-Sense Film System for capturing Sensorama content. It consisted of multiple 35mm film cameras arranged in a semicircular arc to mimic human vision. Each camera was equipped with different lenses and filters to capture a wide field of view and create a stereoscopic depth perception. The camera rig also included additional components to simulate other senses. The film footage would then be synchronized with the other sensory elements and played back to the viewer through the Sensorama. The experiences were 3 minutes long. Morton Heilig also patented the Telesphere Mask, which was a head-mounted device designed to be worn by one user. It featured stereoscopic displays for each eye, allowing a sense of depth perception. The mask also incorporated stereo speakers that provided binaural audio, enhancing the realism of the experience. Additionally, it had built-in fans and provided wind effects and aroma generations to further simulate the senses. There was a patent filed for it in 1960. We then moved on to Philco, an acronym for the Philadelphia Battery Company. In 1961, Philco created a VR headset for military use, marking the birth of the first motion-tracking head-mounted display. You would place a camera in a room and then your headset in the other room, and you could move your head around, then view images through the screen through a remote location. The idea was you could monitor dangerous activities from a faraway location. The term for things like this came to be known as telepresence. It used mini CRT cathode ray tube screens as well as magnetic sensors, making it possible to determine the orientation of the operator's head. However, it was bulky and heavy. Weighing around 5 pounds, it was never released commercially. In 1964, a book called Simulacron 3 was published, and it goes into the philosophical implications of virtual reality at a time when the concept barely existed. There were 2 good movie adaptations of the book, which I'll talk about later. In 1965, Ivan Sutherland, a computer scientist, authored an essay called The Ultimate Display, in which he laid out ideas far beyond what was possible with the technology at the time. Sutherland's vision was to create a device that could generate a visual field, so realistic to be indistinguishable from reality. He commented on the possibility that the device might actually create real objects. As he put it, the ultimate display would of course be a room within a room which a computer can control the existence of matter. A chair displayed in that room would be good enough to sit in, while handcuffs displayed in such a room would be confining, and a bullet displayed in that room would be fatal. With approximate programming, such display could literally be the wonderland into which Alice walked. The US military discovered the true value of training pilots in flight simulation. A pilot's chance of surviving a mission jumped 95% if he had made it through the first 5 missions. As early as 1929, the Link Corporation was building flight sims. As aviation got more complex, flight sims saved millions of dollars. The cockpits pitched, rolled, and yawned based on a pilot's actions. The only issue was the sims had no real-time visual feedback. This changed rapidly in the 1950s as commercial video cameras became available. The idea was then introduced where the camera footage would change based on the pilot's actions, which drastically improved the effectiveness of simulations. Sutherland understood the potential for computer-generated images in flight sims instead of video cameras and scale models. Sutherland teamed up with David Evans in 1968 to create the electronic scene generator. Instead of constructing scale models from paint, foam, and glue, the computers constructed images using stored data. Any 3D object could be digitalized and entered into the computer. For example, an airport could be represented as a large number of 3D prints, with lines connecting each point. After a series of calculations, a view from any vantage point could be constructed. In 1968, Sutherland and his student Bob Sproul created the first VR/AR head-mounted display, the Sword of Damocles, which was a series of cables attached to a metal tube which was suspended from the ceiling. It was the first HMD that plugged into a computer rather than cameras. The headset consisted of 2 cathode ray tubes, which is the same tech used in old CRT TVs. Sutherland experimented with ultrasonic and mechanical head position sensors. The tracking system was called the shower stall, which is an ultrasonic sensor. It had 4 receivers which hung, while 3 transmitters shot transmissions at different frequencies mounted to the HMD. Apparently the tracking wasn't the best, airflow even affected it. The head positions measuring devices feed the positions to a computer. The computer then sent the info to a matrix multiplier which was responsible for rotation transformation. Info was then passed onto a clipping device which did the perspective transformation. Finally, the information went onto an analog display, and then the info went onto a CRT headset. 3D graphics and raster displays weren't invented, so images were very primitive. You could only see transparent wireframe rooms and objects. This was the most complex image available to see on the device. The headset was plugged into a PDP-1 computer. Sutherland's company purchased General Electric's flight simulator division and, after lots of hard work, built some of the most advanced flight sims of all time.
It's the sort of mission the Marines fly daily in CH-46 helicopters. And yet this one's just a little different. In fact, it's a simulation. The first simulation ever to take advantage of a new era of computer-generated image visual systems. The Rediffusion and Evans and Sutherland CT-5.
I've got him. I'll call Deadeye. Deadeye Hotshot 1-1 has a tally on Hotshot 2-4.
As these formation sequences show, CT-5 is the most operationally capable CGI visual ever developed. Its ability to display very high levels of scene content through wide fields of view means that crews under training receive realistic visual cues. Visual cues such as those shown in this scenario are far superior to the simple two-dimensional texture approach used in less sophisticated systems.
We're in the middle of a war, and I was going to be drafted, so I decided to go in the Air Force. That's probably the best way to go to war, in the Air Force. And so my job was, how in the world do we interface humans with machines?
While building flight sims, Furness understood that there were a lot of issues with the current way they were building them.
One is that we were aiming the airplane in order to aim all the systems on the airplane. We also had this problem of seeing at night. We had these marvelous sensors that would let us look into the nighttime. But our cockpits were so jammed with instruments, we didn't have enough space to put in a display so we could even see what's coming from the sensors. We had also this problem of complexity. Here we had an aircraft that had 50 computers on board and one operator. And how in the world were we going to make sense of that? And how is this one human going to operate all those computers? And then there was this whole deal that you had the outside in and inside out. There was a world out there that you needed to tend to, but all the instruments in the cockpit. So you had to move in and out in order to make sense of things. So I started working on different ways of representing information. This whole business of small displays, well, I discovered, why don't we just take something as small and make it appear to be big and project it as a virtual image? So you see here is sort of the world's first helmet-mounted display that does a virtual image projection. And here's Lieutenant Furness wearing that very first helmet-mounted display.
It would display information so pilots didn't have to look down while they were flying.
Then there was the aiming problem. Here we were aiming the airplane in order to aim all the systems on the airplane. Well, I said, well, can't the pilot really see the target out there? Isn't that good enough? So we started working on a way to take the helmet position of that crew member and use it to aim the systems on the aircraft. And here you see the world's first helmet-mounted sight in 1969.
Furness had built two separate systems for seeing sensor information and system information for aiming, and he had an amazing idea.
What if we put the helmet sight and helmet display together? Now what we would have is this virtual image that can move around wherever we want to, but we always know where it is by using the tracking system. So you see in 1971 what we call a visually coupled system. So this let us move those sensors outside the aircraft wherever we're moving our head, but at the same time getting the visual scene. So it was just like a picture window we cut in the cockpit. This huge picture that we could move around and basically get rid of the obstructions of the cockpit. This was remarkable, transformational. But we had to build a simulator. Now, some of you may have seen this photograph before. This is my so-called Darth Vader helmet. I started building this in the late 70s, and we turned it on for the first time in 1981. It was amazing. 120-degree field of view, binocular, a 16-bit tracking system, speech input, eye tracking, all these kinds of things that we had. Oh my goodness, what have we created? Because we found now it was like in an IMAX theater where you could look around. And we found that instead of looking at a screen that was a head-mounted screen, it was like we were pulled inside into another world. This transformation was remarkable. And when we did that, those three-dimensional abilities that we use in the real world, we could actually now use in this computer-generated world, which meant that we had much more power and much more bandwidth to and from the brain and our psychomotor capabilities.
And inside what must be the zaniest helmet ever devised, this is what the pilot sees. Like some fantastic arcade game of the future, the pilot flies through a world that the computer has devised for him, based upon the known characteristics of the F-15 and its potential adversaries. In this Tron-like 3D arena, he can take off and land, navigate to preset coordinates, and he can fire his guns if need be, there is still a gun, and activate his missiles, all by voice control. The engineers readily admit that these futuristic concepts are likely to remain impractical for at least the next 8 to 10 years. And clearly, no pilot could be persuaded to dogfight pulling G's with a ridiculous contraption like this on his head. But it is only experimental. And advances in miniaturizing the high-resolution TV screens that will project the graphic displays onto the inside of the visor have already led to the development of a new and much more feasible flying helmet currently under test. But even more unusual ideas are being developed at Wright-Patterson. This man is switching switches simply by looking at them. Using infrared lasers, sensors in his helmet read his eye position from moment to moment so that computers can identify the switch he's looking at. And down the corridor, The tiny magnetic fields given off by the brain activity of this research volunteer are being analyzed by a superconducting device known simply as SQUID. Controlling fighter aircraft systems simply by thinking is, some researchers claim, no more than 30 years away.
So, the Darth Vader helmet propelled us into the super cockpit. And the super cockpit was basically taking all of these things and using new devices, new technologies. At the time, we were using miniature cathode ray tubes. You had 15 kilovolts sitting on the side of your helmet, projecting all these electrons on the screens and things like that. So what we were able to do then is take this information that was all discrete and separated and highly coded and basically build a fused display, a mimetic display. It's something that would give the pilot a gestalt to get an understanding of everything that was going on in the world at the same time. A fusion of your air data information, of your threat information, of your navigation, all these kind of things were projected in one-to-one registration with the real world. If you're flying at night, you'd see this picture. If you're flying in the daylight, you would actually see the outside world with some of this information superimposed on top of it. So it was a fusion between VR and AR that would allow us to do this.
Furness had contributed a lot to VR in such a short amount of time. Virtual reality was also seeping its way into pop culture. In 1973, the German film World on a Wire, directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder and based on Daniel F's novel Simulacron 3. It delved into the implications of virtual reality. The film blurred the lines between simulated and real worlds, challenging our perception of reality. Virtual reality is also about interaction within a digital environment, and there was a man asking questions in that field. Myron Kruger, a graduate student in computer science at the University of Wisconsin during the late 1960s, stood out among his engineering-focused peers due to his background in liberal arts. While his colleagues prioritized computer efficiency, Kruger was drawn into the philosophical implications of human-computer interaction. Kruger was captivated by the evolving relationship between humans and technology, recognizing that computers were advancing at an unprecedented pace. Unlike Ivan Sutherland's concept, sitting within a computer, Kruger envisioned a future where people could freely move around and actively engage with computers. He believed that conventional computer art was rooted in ancient techniques and foresaw the future of art as interactive. Collaborating with engineers while pursuing his PhD, Kruger delved into creating computer-controlled environments in 1969. His groundbreaking installation, Metaplay, emerged in the 70s, featuring a life-sized rear projector where users became the canvas for interactive experiences. The installation responded in real time to their movements.
Myron Kruger of the Artificial Reality Corporation is credited with being the first computer researcher to find a way into the virtual world. His video place has become a meeting point for reality hackers.
I resented about computers. I resented the fact that I had to sit down and use them. I resented the fact that I was using a 100-year-old device to operate on a keyboard and trying to make the experience a computer rather than learning to use it or learning to use something efficient.
Imagine becoming your own shadow and being able to interact with other people's shadows in a simulated space, to touch them and to be touched. Kruger's aim is to create just such a shadow world where people can relate to each other in a way quite impossible in the physical realm.
It was as if evolution had prepared us for seeing ourselves on television screens combined with computer images. But also, one of the main attractions is the juxtaposition of large and small, so that the two people will now interact and to some extent discover what the possibilities are, what is suggested emotionally by scale. And this is part of the general video place concept of people getting together in the artificial reality. In other words, what's happening now between the two people is that we're now interacting in a way that humans have never could.
It fostered dynamic engagements. Users could draw and create a digital artwork without physical contact or choreograph the movement of flowing particles across invisible paths.
This is artificial reality as well. It's artistic side, body surfacing.
Moment by moment, you're creating something beautiful, but that beautiful thing changes so that you have to keep moving. And you don't think about sitting back and looking at the result, because you can create something equally beautiful the next 10 seconds. being involved and thinking about it instant by instant rather than capturing it and hanging it on the wall.
Kruger's visionary concept introduced critters, a computer-generated creatures designed for playful interaction.
Myron Kruger doesn't apologize for not having an arts background. He's a computer whiz. Artificial reality is created by using a video camera, a projector, and a computer. A person's outline is projected on any movement forces the computer to react, using a little green digital character called the critter.
And the critter has all sorts of different behaviors, and I play with them as if he were a graphic pet. And it's designed to tell you about the sort of artificial world that we're entering. He's the first step, a playful creature who will come out and engage you in a new kind of play. Your body now is interacting on the screen.
Those virtual beings responded to users' behaviors, engaging in activities like chasing, landing on a user's hand, and sparking entertaining scenarios. It was a really cool exploration of what it means to interact with a completely simulated reality. There were also pushes into making entirely virtual worlds. The Aspen Movie Map, developed in 1978 at MIT, offered users a virtual tour of Aspen, Colorado. It was an early example of hypermedia systems and a precursor to virtual reality, utilizing gyroscopic stabilizers and film cameras to create a navigatable virtual environment. There were also massive advancements in military flight helmets at the time. In 1979, the McDonnell Douglas Vital helmet made waves in military aviation. It provided an immersive virtual reality experience for pilots, enhancing situational awareness and performance. This pioneering technology marked the first practical use of a VR head-mounted display outside of the laboratory. Then the 80s came around. All VR needed was a push from somebody who could combine multiple technologies. While at Atari, Thomas Zimmerman was experimenting with different ways to interact with computers, which led to him creating a glove prototype. Another employee, Jared Lehner, was interested in what he called virtual reality and knew he had to start a company. VPL Research, which stands for Virtual Programming Language, was founded in 1984.
Founded by Jared Lanier and Jean-Jacques Rameau, VPL continues to research, develop, manufacture, and license virtual reality technology.
After Zimmerman created the prototype, he needed someone who could program for the 6502 microcontrollers, which led him to hire Mitch Altman. Harville added a system using fiber optic cables on each finger. When a user's fingers bends, it causes the fiber optic cable's light signal to change, which was made into asymmetrical outputs and converted into finger positions on a computer. You could then manipulate and move 3D objects in a game engine. The patent goes into a lot more detail about the specifics.
The DataGlove contains patented flex sensors to measure finger bending, a magnetic positioning sensor to measure X, Y, and Z position, and roll, pitch, and yaw.
It was aimed to be used in a broad range of industries.
The DataGlove can replace the slow, manual method of measuring finger joints using a goniometer. Not only can objects be moved and rotated, they can be operated on as well. GRASP is a visual programming language developed at VPL. A simplified data glove called the Z-Glove is used as an input device. GRASP programs are constructed by arranging and gesturing to icons on the computer screen.
Well, this is our virtual reality glove. It's called the DataGlove. And the idea is that you can put on this glove, and the glove lets you feel a world that doesn't exist as if it's real and pick up things in the world as if they're real. So it lets you reach into an imaginary world.
The DataGlove is an input device worn on the hand. It reads the gesture and movement of the hand and transfers it into the virtual world. The DataGlove consists of two primary sensors. Along the fingers are fiber optic sensors that measure the bends of the fingers. The polemus records the overall movement and orientation of the hand in 6 degrees of freedom. Together, these are used to generate a virtual human hand, capable of manipulating virtual objects, and in general, allowing a human being to use the same hand-eye coordination strategies for manipulating the virtual world that come into play in the physical world.
Following this, we got the iPhone, a proper VR system.
VPL's head-mounted displays
called the iPhones that you put on, and when you put them on, You're seeing inside an imaginary world instead of inside the physical world.
Worn over the head, the iPhone immerses the user in the virtual world.
By wearing computerized clothing right over your sense organs, you transport your sensory system into a reality that can be of any description.
By surrounding her eyes with stereo video and her ears with stereo sound. In front of each eye are a combination of wide-angle optics and a display. The RB2 system generates a stereo three-dimensional wide-angle view that creates the impression that you're inside the simulation as opposed to viewing it on a monitor.
The Macintosh computer serves as a control workstation, also as a design workstation. In terms of control, you can have data gloves, data suits, data vests, any type of device to map the user into the virtual reality. In terms of a design workstation, the Macintosh uses the VPL product Body Electric, which allows the user to build virtual worlds and to understand gestures of the hands, and also to manipulate different types of graphical objects which are built in VPL's product RB2 Swivel, a virtual reality version of Swivel 3D. At that point, the Body Electric software sends the images to the Silicon Graphics hardware. The Silicon Graphics hardware acts as a video renderer, and it uses a VPL product known as Isaac. Isaac is a full renderer that runs on the Silicon Graphics. At that point, Isaac running on the Silicon Graphics sends a video image to these iPhones. The VPL iPhones have two LCD TVs which present a stereoscopic view of the virtual world.
Meanwhile, on the Macintosh, Body Electric is actively running the simulation. While the iPhones see fully shaded renderings, Flex, the programming environment of Body Electric, acts as a control panel for real-time editing. VPL is also putting sound into virtual reality. The audiosphere renders sound in 3 dimensions, height and depth, as well as left and right. The user perceives sound as coming from a specific location in the virtual world. The audiosphere includes a 320 MIP signal processor called the Convolvutron, software, and a digital sampler synthesizer for sound creation. Here's a typical audiosphere configuration. Other inputs include a headset mic and MIDI equipment. A simple test environment demonstrates sound properties within virtual reality.
Let's fly over to it. It gets very loud when I get right up to it. I can grab it, put it up to my right ear, put it in front of me, put it directly behind my head, put it up to my left ear, and the sounds are relatively realistic. The way the sound changes.
The virtual world incorporates sound and 3D graphics to create a fully interactive world for entertainment. Each user can create their own unique playground.
It's a great clock. I guess it really is almost 3. Oh. Here's my new fridge. I don't know. I think the fridge is going to be too far from the sink there. I think I'll have that counter cut and part of the counter put on the other side of the fridge and bring it in.
Plans for remote control of the Puma robotic arm in space are under development at NASA Ames Research. An exact model of the Puma was created in RB2 Swivel. The model was brought into virtual reality and mapped to respond to the motions of the user. This real-time control was programmed in Flex, VPL's visual programming environment. The motions are then passed to the actual Puma. Sophisticated motions of the hand and arm, which are simple for humans to perform, are difficult to program using traditional methods. Therefore, the DataGlove is ideal as it can precisely replicate and record the motions of the human operator.
The first thing I'm going to do is use this little cursor to select a 3D flying function. Select the rocket.
press the green button to go, and now basically I fly in the direction I'm looking. What I've got here is a virtual kitchen. One particular interesting line of research for the Japanese. You can fly up, and there's a frying pan. If I fly close enough and reach down, I can pick up this frying pan, have a look at it, drop it on the floor, make it vanish altogether. Teapot. Teapot. If I look at that, if I drop this here, the teapot will in fact drop down for some miles and carry on going into infinity.
So can the speed be altered on the animation here?
Sure, I can.
Being in virtual reality is an exquisite experience. It's as good as being in dreams. It has that same magical quality, except that you share it completely with other people, just like the physical world. And also you compose it like a work of art, so you are in complete control of that combination. It's just never been experienced before. It's extraordinary.
They went on to create the Reality Built for two, so you could experience VR with someone else.
On June 7, 1989, VPL Research presented the RB2 system, the first virtual reality system to accommodate two people.
The datasuit was a full-body outfit with motion sensors for arms and legs and trunk-enabled comprehensive motion capture for virtual environments, all coordinated using a computer language known as the body electric. These devices would have been a nightmare to manufacture, especially in that era, marking a pivotal moment for the birth of fully computer-generated 3D worlds. Body Electric served as the program to experience these hardware components, complemented by Isaac as the rendering software. NASA had been exploring VR for a while and partnered with VPL Research to advance the technology which was still in its early stages. The Virtual Interface Environment Workstation, also known as the VIEW, was developed by NASA's Aerospace Human Factors Research Division.
California's NASA Ames Research Center was one of the first labs to experiment with virtual reality.
This technology is part of what we call the Virtual Environment Workstation. The idea at Ames over the past 5 years has been to develop a very human-matched interface, a way to literally get inside images, to interact with them, to walk around inside them, to give very natural commands to the host computer, and for a number of different applications. The foundation of the virtual workstation is this helmet-mounted display. In the front package here are two small TV screens, one for each eye. The effect is that you get a very strong stereoscopic image. You view that image through two very wide-angle optics. Our idea was to try to match human field of view as much as possible. This gives us about a 120-degree angle of view. Also on top of the stock is a magnetic sensor device that tells you, the system, where you are within the virtual space. The rest of the things on the headset are a microphone, so you can basically give verbal commands, connected speech commands to the host computer as you would, as if you were talking to another person. And the headphones give auditory feedback. We use a couple different kinds of sound cueing. One is just straight from a synthesizer, so that, for example, as you touch a virtual object, you get a contact cue or proximity cues as you get nearer and farther. Or the second level is 3D sound cueing. With a piece of technology that we built called the Convolvatron, you can actually hear the sounds coming from outside your head at a discrete distance and location. And because of the tracker, we can also make the sound stay there. If you move your head, the sound actually stays where it's supposed to be. So virtual objects can act as real sound sources as they would in the real world, for example. Another piece of the virtual workstation is what we call a DataGlove. The glove is instrumented with fiber optic sensors so that as you bend your fingers, a computer-generated model of your hand that's in the virtual environment is controlled by it. You don't see your real hand because you're completely enclosed. So when you reach out, move your fingers, your virtual hand will mimic that, and you can pick up objects. And we've made software so that you can make different kinds of gestures, kind of like American Sign Language. For example, if I make a gesture like this, it will fly my viewpoint through that virtual space.
NASA may use virtual reality to allow a technician to work on a space station without leaving Earth. In virtual reality, a person has the illusion that they are doing the work themselves, even when they are 1,000,000 miles away.
Flying enabled.
Starting from his office, the technician may fly through space to the station where he might activate other space instruments or repair them. One may wonder how Gibson, a self-admitted computer illiterate, foresaw this technology.
But what he's described is really, I think it's a really good thing to shoot for. The kind of cyberspace that he describes is really something that will be very helpful for all of us to be involved in.
The Virtual Environment Display System is a multisensory interactive display environment in which a user can virtually explore a 360-degree synthesized or remotely sensed environment and can viscerally interact with its components. The objective of this research is to develop a multi-purpose operator interface environment with initial applications in telerobotics, data management, and human factors research. The foundation of the system is a head-mounted display unit that consists of medium-resolution, monochromatic liquid crystal display screens. The LCD technology is used to meet design constraints on size, weight, power, safety, and cost, and also to provide a see-through capability. The display screens are presented to each eye of the user through wide-angle optics with an effective field of view for each eye of 120 degrees horizontal and vertical. Imagery displayed on the screens is pre-distorted to match the field of view of the viewing optics. The resulting stereoscopic image closely matches the human operator's binocular and peripheral vision capabilities and strongly contributes to sense of presence in the remote or synthesized environment displayed. Head motion of the user is tracked by a sensor mounted on the helmet, and the derived position and orientation data is used to update the images in sync with the user's activities. As a result, the displayed imagery appears to completely surround the user in 3-space. In addition to stereoscopic depth cues, the system provides full motion parallax and motion perspective cues that allow the operator to explore virtual objects in real time and from multiple viewpoints. The technology used to track the user's head position and orientation is also used to position a 3D cursor in the virtual environment. The system also includes lightweight glove-like devices that transmit data records of arm, hand, and finger position and shape to a host computer. In coordination with speech recognition technology, this information is used to interact with virtual objects in the synthesized environment. End applications of this technology include control of remotely operated robotic devices and vehicles that require a sufficient quantity and quality of sensory input and feedback to approximate actual presence at the task site. A workstation-mounted viewer has also been developed for application in information management tasks and human factors research. This configuration can provide a movable window into a three-dimensional data space surrounding the viewer. In this application, virtual control panels and reconfigurable workstations can be rapidly prototyped or adapted for different users. Further research will use the virtual environment display system to develop portable information environments and virtual workstations.
VPL Research and its products found their way into the 1992 science fiction film The Lawnmower Man, which is a hilarious watch. It's a bit tone deaf and it features a disabled man who becomes friends with a monkey and becomes too smart. I got the feeling after watching it, Simple Jack from Tropic Thunder was based off it. VPL was ahead of its time, facing technological limitations, financial management issues, legal entanglements, and a market that was just not ready for widespread adoption of VR technology, which unfortunately caused them to file for bankruptcy in 1990. And in 1999, Sun Microsystems had acquired all of its patents, subsequently selling them to Oracle in 2010. The founder Lena remains somewhat involved in the VR realm and has been a vocal critic of Meta's approach to VR, earning the label of a certified technology doomer. After the 80s, VR was in a really cool space. There are now completely simulated realities at our fingertips, and a couple of companies that made big breakthroughs and paved the way for the future. We were then heading heading into the 90s. And for VR to catch on, it was going to take someone who could properly commercialize it. The next person to have a go
was John Waldom. He was still at university in the early 1980s when he first heard of the idea.
I'd always been interested in computers. In fact, I built my very first computer at the age of 17 from the very first microchips. But it's really when I read an article about how computers could be in the future and the need to interact with computers in three-dimensional space. That's what started me in virtual reality. How are we going to do that?
He published a paper on the subject, and his prototype, the roaming caterpillar, was featured on BBC's Tomorrow's World.
Now, by looking through that window, you're able to see into the world of the computer. And by wearing the helmet, you're able to see it in 3D. So down there's the television I was talking about, with my glass on the top. Move around, and up comes my flash new table. There it is.
It was a concept to us that was perfectly clear, but to others that we went to for financing, it was crazy. They just couldn't imagine it. They couldn't understand the technology, etc.
Undaunted, he raised the initial capital from family and friends and started work in his garage. His supporters' faith in him was soon justified. In 1988, he competed for the Best New Business Award with his first virtual reality game. Against 92 other entrants, he won.
We were amazed. I mean, basically, here we were in the competition up against companies producing medical products like heart valves, new biotech companies, and we actually won the competition.
That recognition of his work resulted in £750,000 funding from a commercial sponsor and was the breakthrough he needed.
Then, after years of hard work at the Computer Graphics Exhibition in London,
Ladies and gentlemen, virtuality is a reality for the leisure industry.
they announced two units, a SU standing up unit and an SI sitting down model. These units were mainly sold to British Telecom Research Labs to experiment with network telepresence applications. They even sold units to Ford, IBM and Mitsubishi. Virtuality produced an arcade version of the standing up model, calling it the Cyberspace, which was released in 1991. Alongside the cheaper sitting down model, it couldn't have been better timed, with 91 being a massive year for amusement rides.
By 1991, John's company was poised to revolutionize the entertainment industry, and there was a massive surge of interest in his new game system. It was an immediate success, and John's company took the market by storm. They made their first $1 million by the end of the year, and since then, profits have continued to soar.
At the time, arcade machines costed £2,000 to £10,000. Virtuality devices costed between $20,000 and $30,000, making them on the expensive side. It also required an employee to let people in and out of the machine, which added to the cost, which ultimately was passed on to consumers. It cost £4 for 3 minutes of game time. There were a range of games you could play, including Dactyl Nightmare, which was a first-person shooter. It had Capture the Flag and Deathmatch game modes. Gridbusters, a robot shoot-'em-up, Hero, which was a locked door puzzle, and Legend Quest, a fantasy adventure game.
And that looks like my first teammate arriving. This virtual world is a fantasy adventure, and we each role-play a different character.
Hi, I'm Eddie. I'm a dwarf.
And this is me, Howard, as a wizard. Our voices are processed too, so we even sound like our characters.
I'm James, and I'm a thief.
I'm called Matt, and I'm an elf.
Each character has a set of special powers, so if we work as a team, we'll have a much better chance of surviving the adventures ahead.
Come on, Howard, follow us down the stairs.
I'm right behind you. Well, to move, all I have to do is look in the direction that I want to go, and then press this button on top of the joystick. And that works because I'm standing in an electromagnetic field which is created by this ring.
Okay, I'm following my teammates down into some sort of room. That's me in the middle in the red cloak, and there's a suspicious pile of bones on the left there. Avoid those. I think there's trouble now coming from the right. It's a skeleton. It'll mean hand-to-hand combat. I could do with some help.
I'll help. Elves are brilliant swordsmen.
Where are all the others?
Hang on there, we're right behind you.
Polished him off.
I made him into bone meal. Okay, well, let's have a look in this chest, because there should be a spell book in here, and wizards can get special powers. I'll try and pick it up. There we are, there's a spell book, and in here it contains a fireball, a magical fireball. So I'll have to use that in a minute. Let's go towards that door then. Try it out.
Take aim, Howard.
Press my joystick. Yeah, there it is. Now that door opens so we can go through.
Ooh, I don't like this. There's bats.
No, they're getting in my eyes.
and the sit-down model was just as much fun. It featured games like Battlesphere, which included space battles, Exorex, which was a robot warrior game,
to be submerged into a three-dimensional world to battle for your freedom. The combat zone you'll enter in your Exorex vehicle is a barren city surrounded by a force field of laser beams.
Total Destruction, which was stock car racing, Flying Aces, a biplane dogfight simulator, and VTOL, a Harrier jump jet simulator.
Over to my left is a control tower, and over on the right, a red jet, and that jet is waiting a pilot.
It'd be quite a challenge to see if either of us could land on it.
Where have you gone now? Oh, and away you go. Right, fine. I better try and catch up with you.
Virtuality seemed to have struck gold, capturing market share that VPL never could. The success meant they had to make more advanced headsets, which led them to develop the 2000 series. The company switched to Intel-based processors and Motorola GPUs, which made texture mapping possible and a range of graphical improvements. They had a standing up and sitting down model. There were a whole range of new games to play as well. They made a sequel to Dactyl Nightmare.
The Dactyl is back and set to invade the world for a second time. Only you can save us from the nightmare.
Then we got the 3000 series, which featured an updated Intel processor, with the main new addition being an added rifle. It came in two variants, one with a CO2-powered recoil and the other had a standard toy gun. Some of the most popular games were Quickshot Carnival and 0 Hour. They also created a space glove, which featured finger tracking, and later went on to make a version called the Force Feedback Glove, which had actuators that applied force to your fingers to give you the illusion of grabbing things. Virtuality had nailed the VR arcade market, and at the same time, VR was seeping its way more and more into pop culture, being featured in the popular TV show Murder, She Wrote. Other companies were also jumping into the market. One of those was the Virtual Research Flight Helmet, which was a PC-powered VR headset, released in 1991, designed around a 2.7-inch LCD display and Leap optics.
Put on this head-mounted display, you're going to see everything the same way. Let me show you how this works.
Glorified bike helmet here.
Right. We've got two small color TVs, flat screen in here, one for each eye, and the optics that make the image look like it's further away.
So this is an electronic 3D image that we're going to project.
You got it. And then we've got the stereo headphones.
Surround sound.
Then on top here, we've got a magnetic tracker. Just like the ultrasonic tracker on the other system, this tells the computer where you're looking and where your head is while you're in the virtual world.
So not only my head motion is recorded, but the whole body is as well. So I just put it on here?
No, first we're going to strap you in.
Okay, get in the cage first.
Then you're going to be able to fly that jet that we saw in that other...
Yeah, I hope they know where they're going. Yeah, you are right in the middle. In fact, almost floating. I guess that's what they mean by like full immersion, huh? And you're right in the middle of all the action.
It had a field of view of 93 degrees at 360 by 240 per eye and 3 degrees of freedom head tracking. The flight helmet comes in a few models, including the Emagin 3 and the VR4. These headsets were not for public use and were mostly within the avionics industry. Later models like the VR4 had a bigger and wider fields of view and way more power. While not suitable for home use, the flight helmet is considered an impressive headset even by today's standards. Morton Heilig even tried it. In '94, Alternative Worlds Technologies released a virtual reality arcade game called AWT Reality Rocket. The game was promoted as the world's first multiplayer VR arcade game. The machine essentially consisted of a seat for the player with a portal around it, a virtual reality headset, and conditional controls on the seat's arm. The game included modified versions of classic games like Wolfenstein 3D and Blake & Stone Aliens of Gold, adapted specifically for the system. The game also featured a new game called Cyber Tag, which was a mod of the Wolfenstein 3D with a futuristic theme and multiplayer mode. Two machines could connect to each other, allowing the players to face off in a virtual reality duel. The headset had two miniature CRT displays with a diagonal field of view of 45 degrees and a refresh rate of 15 Hz. The headset was non-positional and tracked movement in 3 degrees of freedom. It just used gyroscopes, but it was inevitable that eventually somebody would try and build a headset to be used at home. The Virtual I/O Glasses was a virtual reality HMD developed and released in '95.
Now you've got it. Congratulations, you've entered the future, where advanced optical technology brings you virtual I/O eyeglasses. Now you'll experience things you never saw before, in a way you never thought possible. Watch. A video revolution. Video that's up close and personal. Video and sound from your TV, VCR, CD-ROM, and PC. video from your electronic games, and better still, video in 3D.
The HMD also connected to a computer through standard VGA and audio ports, making it compatible with a wide range of PCs. It supported a variety of VR experiences, including games, simulations, and 3D visualization applications. The eyeglasses had several limitations, as it was an early virtual reality device, and the display resolution, like all headsets at the time, was pretty low, especially by today's standards, leading to a noticeable pixelation effect on the headset, which affected the clarity, and the tracking accuracy wasn't the best either. It had lots of inaccuracies.
Notice on top, here is the mute button, the volume control, and a switch for standard or 3D play. On the sides, high-fidelity earphones that fit comfortably over your ears.
It was known by several users to make you vomit and give extreme headaches. It was a low-resolution TV screen that didn't even appear much bigger than a TV at the time. It was featured in the Next Gen US magazine. At one point, the company was going to redesign the headset to be an add-on for the PlayStation 1, but it had a retail price of $800, costing 2.5 times the amount of the console, and it never left the prototype stage. But Virtual I/O glasses got one thing right, which was creating an at-home device at an affordable price. With the advent of at-home gaming and consoles and computers getting more and more powerful, the writing was on the wall for arcades as they began to slowly decline. Companies knew that at-home gaming was the future, and at-home VR, if done right, could propel these companies into the stratosphere. And one of the first companies to have a go was Nintendo. Nintendo was approached by the US firm Reflection. Reflection Technologies had independently produced display technology, and Gunpei Yokoi saw the potential in a 3D system. Yokoi came up with the idea of using two displays to create a three-dimensional image. Nintendo invested millions of dollars in what they were calling the VR32. The company was very eager to recoup its costs and get the hardware onto store shelves. However, the unveiling of the Virtual Boy turned out to be one of the most disastrous in the history of the video game industry. It was demonstrated at Nintendo's Shoshi Shinkei 94 trade show. It was marketed as the first portable game console capable of displaying true 3D graphics out of the box.
It needs your eyes. Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
After 2 years of development, it was released on July 21st, 1995 in Japan and August 14th, 95 in North America. Despite the innovative concept, the Virtual Boy was not a commercial success. It sold around 770,000 units and remains Nintendo's worst-selling console of all time. It was reportedly extremely painful on your eyes. It's credited with being such a terrible headset that it basically ruined the reputation of VR in the 90s.
After I played it, I felt like I was dizzy.
Over the years, however, the Virtual Boy has gained a cult-like following, and there is still an active community of indie developers creating new games and experiences for it.
Deserving of all the hate it ever got? Yes.
Following the release of the Virtual Boy, Nintendo experimented with 3D for the Nintendo GameCube, with longtime Nintendo employee Hideki Kono saying that Luigi's Mansion in particular looked excellent. This idea was scrapped as the add-on would have been more expensive than the console itself, but they weren't the only company to have a go. In the mid-1990s, Forte Technologies in New York introduced the VFX1 headgear, a consumer-level virtual reality headset. The device included a helmet and a handheld controller, and an ISA interface. It costed $995 US, which is about $2,000 in today's money. At the high end of pricing, it was a leap in terms of VR at the time. It had dual 0.7-inch 263 by 230 color LCD displays capable of showing 256 colors and providing a 45-degree diagonal field of view. To enhance immersion, it actually had built-in speakers and condenser microphone for audio. The headset's head tracking allowed for users to move their head, pitch, roll, and yaw using the internal sensors. The handheld Cyberpunk controller had 3 buttons and could emulate a mouse. To connect the VFX1 to a PC, it required a 16-bit ISA expansion slot. This board transmitted audio, video, and tracking data through a single proprietary 8-foot cable. For usage, a compatible IBM-compatible PC with a 386 CPU, VGA video card with a 26-pin VESA feature connector, and MS-DOS 5.0 or later were needed. If available, stereo sound card could further enhance the audio experience. It was succeeded by the VFX 3D, developed by Interactive Emagin Systems IIS, which was one of the first consumer VR headsets to be used for therapy.
Ian Collins' fear of flying was once so bad he didn't board a plane for 14 years. Now he returns to the skies from the security of a psychologist's office.
Ian, you're in the cabin now of our 737.
Les Posen is using virtual reality therapy to help people conquer their phobias, putting the client in the situation, in Ian's case, on board an aircraft where anxiety sometimes takes over. The seats are equipped to simulate every situation, from takeoff to mid-air turbulence.
Designed by Douglas Ball for Canadian Aviation Electronics, the FOHMD was intended for simulation use. It's by far one of the coolest looking VR headsets I've seen, with a resolution of 1000 by 1000 pixels and a field of view of up to 127 degrees horizontally and 66 degrees vertically. The FOHMD used fiber optics, color light valves, and color CRT technology for imaging. The headset was also used in a static positional simulator and was designed to supplement the Dart display system. It offered two basic eyepiece designs, one with an air combiner and the other one with a prism combiner. The prism combiner allowed for a longer optical path, resulting in a more believable simulation as it minimized the abstraction of the Dart imagery. To counteract its weight, polyethylene foaming agents were used to shape the helmets to the pilot's head. Back in 1993, Sony unveiled their first delve into VR, named the Vistortion. It was essentially a 33-inch TV. Despite never hitting the commercial market, the Vistortion was the beginning of Sony's jump into the VR world. Japan Airlines even offered it to passengers on long-haul flights. Then Sega jumped in. Sega began working on VR headsets as early as 1991. Especially with the emergence of real-time displays capable of rendering large numbers of 3D polygons. The idea of VR seemed more possible than ever before. VPL headsets costed $250,000, and that's just not realistic for an add-on to a console. The Sega team knew they had to create a headset for $200. VR veterans like Jared Lehner and Michael Latham were involved in the project. Initial headset designs were created by IDEO, featuring a sleek and futuristic silver finish. It was planned as an add-on peripheral for the Sega Genesis. At the same time, Ono Sendai, a design firm, took on the challenge of building an affordable VR headset for Sega. The team hacked together potential headsets using video camera LCDs and even a hacked Radio Shack electronic compass to display outputs on a computer. Their prototype was made of a foam core box with a compass stuck to it with glue. They made a simple application where you could see a spinning ball. They reached out to Sega and demonstrated their first prototype of the potential headset. It seemed that Ono Sendai were the only ones that could actually build the headset. Sega was impressed and agreed to fund a more developed version of the hardware. They then built a second prototype to show Sega what a final product would be, and created a tracking sensor that only costed $1 per unit. Sega tried to crash the demo, but they couldn't, so Sega awarded them the $250,000 to build the final headset. But then issues started brewing. Ono Sendai couldn't get any of Sega's games to test their headset, so they had to test it with VHS tapes of the Ren and Stimpy show. Eventually they got a copy of an unknown Star Wars game. Sega planned 4 games to be made, with Dante Anderson producing Iron Hammer and Matrix Runner, with Carl Gray assigned with Nuclear Rush and Outlaw Racing. They planned to utilize a Power Glove-like interface with Sega VR games. Unfortunately, most of these plans fell through, and they decided to make their VR titles with a normal gamepad. And then at Summer CES 1993,
there it is, ladies and gentlemen, the VR headset. And we might put it on someone's head to show that, sir, would you stand up, please? If it hurts. It'll fit over the glasses. Does it hurt? No. Had to answer. Oh, oh. That's it right there. It's a real device.
Put it on and suddenly, I'm deep in a future world of fast-paced action. You're totally immersed in another world.
The final design was meant to be lightweight and comfortable for prolonged wear, with dual LCD screens in the visor and inertial head tracking sensors with stereo sound, with a proposed price tag of $200. It was originally actually planned for release in December 1993 in the US and 94 in the UK. It was mentioned in lots of popular magazines at the time, such as Sega Force, Mega Mean Machines, and Sega Electronic Gaming Monthly. The headset was also featured in the 1995 film The Clockers, which gives us a better look at what the headset actually looked like on someone's face. Support for a possible Western release of the Mega Modern was also once planned, with Koso imagining players interacting in live online worlds. And the world was excited for Sega to release their first VR.
Do you play video games? Yes, but how are you doing to change? You're going to ask me big technological questions now, aren't you? What is the UHF or VHF?
After making additional appearances at CES events, the release of the Sega VR in the United States was delayed from its planned Christmas 1993 launch until August 1994. Journalists were not impressed with the demos they were shown, reporting extreme amounts of dizziness. And Sega announced that the headset would be cancelled. Sega claimed that the reason it was cancelled was because it was so immersive and realistic that players would inadvertently try to move around and hurt themselves, which to be honest is just corporate speak. The real reason, according to the former Sega president, Tom Kalinske, was due to it inducing motion sickness and severe headaches in users. Sega management were also extremely difficult to work with and were pretty quick to pull the plug on the project. The frame rate ranged from 4 to 12 Hz and they needed it to be at least 15 Hz. It also flickered and had lag when you turned your head. If your eyes, ears and orientation aren't in sync, it feels like you've been poisoned. The headset was designed to provide a 360-degree game experience, but the on-screen graphics didn't keep pace with the gamer's head movements, triggering a form of motion sickness. Sega was warned by the research institute that prolonged use of Sega VR could constitute a hazardous risk. Reports were coming in that the headset was making kids sick and giving them headaches. The HMD had a crappy resolution at 256 by 320. Sega had a thumbwheel to adjust the IPD, and the LCD screens were wider than the user's IPD, which forced the user's eyes to look outward, which stresses your eye muscles and can cause permanent eye damage in less than 30 minutes. Once Sega's lawyers heard about this, they wanted the project cancelled due to liability issues. The refresh rate on the headset was also a problem, with the headset's graphical output being in what's called the barphogenic zone. With the 1993 congressional hearings on video games looming, Sega VR couldn't afford any more negative press. Former Sega of America Vice President Shinobu Toyoda stated that the company invested approximately $6 million in the development and production of Sega VR. When Sega of Japan President Hayao Nakayama learned about the high cost and subsequent cancellation of the project, he reportedly displayed an extreme show of anger. There's a really interesting Bandit interview that goes into a lot of detail about the cancellation. Some nifty hackers have actually emulated the Sega Genesis for modern day VR headsets, and it's worth checking out if you're interested. It's a cool chapter in VR, but short-lived. They did end up making a VR headset though. Sega and Namco were competing with each other by creating bigger entertainment facilities in their native countries. Sega released the rotational R360 arcade cabinet in 1990, which was then significantly outclassed by Namco's Galaxian 3 ride attraction. Virtuality was seeing a lot of success with their arcade machine, so Sega wanted to jump in. After showcasing the Sega VR at CES in 1993, Sega's Amusement Research and Development Division in Japan secured a £3.5 million contract with Virtuality. 4 Virtuality employees moved to Sega's AM3 division in Japan to create an industry-leading VR headset. The patents make for a very interesting read. Eventually, the designs were finalized with the finished product christened the Megabyte display. It was installed at numerous indoor theme park venues opened by Sega in Japan during the following months, with a total of 7 locations. It had liquid crystal displays, which made it much smaller than other headsets. Before entering the VR1 attraction, new riders have the option to familiarize themselves with the MVD trial section. This area contains 3 small trial pods where visitors can try the headset for free for a short promotional film showcasing the headset's capabilities.
Megabyte display.
Next, riders are directed to a pre-show viewing area. Live actors and staff attendees guide them through a short video briefing about the upcoming game featuring the main character of the software they'll be experiencing. What made it so unique is it combined VR with a series of hydraulic systems. The headset weighs 640 grams and actually minimizes body contact, making it adaptable to different head shapes through adjusters. It can output real-time 3D graphics and pre-rendered films at a resolution of 756 by 244 pixels with a 60-degree by 46-degree field of view. Each motion system seats 8 people and features a 4-axis base based on the AS1 simulator, jointly developed by Sega and Douglas Trumbull. Originally named the AS1000, the motion systems are designed to resemble futuristic spaceship pods aligning with the attraction space age theme. During operation, the bases provided a vertical up and down movement of 380 millimeters and 34 degrees of left-right movement, requiring riders to wear safety belts. The attraction originally featured a first-person rail shooter game called Space Mission, where riders embark on a mission to the fictional planet Basco to recover stolen confidential information. After some adjustments to the MVD headset sound system, a software update called Planet Adventure was introduced at the Yokohama Joypolis installation in 1995 and later at the Fukuoka branch in April 1996. Little is known about Planet Adventure except that it involves a comedic robot character named E.T., guiding riders through an unexplored planet. However, it seems to have had limited releases compared to the earlier Space Mission, and was not localized for overseas Sega world locations. Atari, like Sega, wanted to capitalize on Virtuality's extreme success and commissioned Virtuality to create a VR headset for their Jaguar console. Virtuality made 2 prototypes. The first one was Red, and they began promoting a long list of games available for pre-order, including a ported version of Dactyl Nightmare. However, there is only a record of them actually having one game ready for the VR headset, called Missile Command.
This is the first game we're doing, called Missile Command, and as you can see, the unit is extremely responsive, and basically if you play the game, you can see that you can track very effectively and in real time, which is the first time this has ever been done at these sort of price points. And you see that you have a full-blown VR system here for the consumer.
And you say this game is only 2 months into development?
Yeah.
Very impressive. These processors work in conjunction with the Jaguar processors?
That's right. Yeah, we have a very high-performance DSP link between the two systems, and as I say, the tracking system in here, inside here, you can see is all these little sensors here.
I'm here with Simon Marston, and he's got something very special right here. It is the very first prototype, I believe, of the Jaguar VR system.
Apparently Atari weren't impressed with the prototype. The tracking wasn't very good and it had a low resolution with red and grey graphics. So Virtuality began work on a second blue one with a high resolution and blue and grey graphics. But Atari lost interest while Virtuality was working on it, and the project never finished and didn't have a commercial release. The prototypes are extremely rare, but you can find them on a lot of retro VR channels like Octavius King, who has an amazing video on the cancelled headset. After having success in arcades, Virtuality looked into non-gaming use cases and created Project Elysium, which was made for IBM to engineering applications. The thought was architects could see the buildings they were making before they were made. There's a great article about it in Next Generation magazine. It was targeted at engineering, architectural, medical, entertainment, and educational markets. It costed from $6,600 to $47,000 for a network system. It seemed to have been used for the launch of the Ford Galaxy in 1995, but there's limited information about this.
A new powerful tool for virtual model interaction is the V-Flexor. Proportional pressure finger inputs allow you to create virtual hands or other manipulation devices. Usable in both hands, the sleeve strap allows easy operation with all the flexibility and control you require.
The world was transitioning from arcade gaming to at-home consoles, and Virtuality failed to build a compelling at-home VR device at a reasonable price. Their disappointing sales numbers meant less revenue, leading to not enough money to build more VR devices, which created a downward spiral. Unfortunately, the 90s VR bubble was bursting. Virtuality filed for bankruptcy in '97 after accumulating debts of over $8 million. The company then declared bankruptcy in 1997. It's impressive how well they commercialized the idea of VR and had a foothold in almost every aspect of VR in the 90s. But the time just wasn't right. Walden's still heavily involved in the industry, currently building AR displays. Between 96 and 98, Sony released a range of VR headsets, building on their Vistoration technology. They got the technology from 33 inches to the illusion of a 52-inch TV from 4 feet away. This one looked super sci-fi as well. It was still yet to feature any sort of motion tracking.
グラストロンというものは理論上2メートル先に52インチの大画面。
Activision's MechWarrior 2 was developed with the headset in mind and could actually be played from the first-person perspective. The fifth model of the Glasstron featured an LCD screen that could be switched off, so you could actually see your surroundings. Some hackers have even got it working with 6 degrees of freedom tracking. Unfortunately, the Glasstron was cancelled a few years after release. In 1999, The Matrix shocked the world at cinemas, showing a completely simulated and virtual world. Another simulation movie, The 13th Floor, was released. It's based on Simulacron 3.
A team of scientists have created a portal to a simulated universe. Now, after 6 years of testing, they are about to cross the boundaries of reality.
It's one of my favorite virtual reality movies and I highly recommend you watch it. VR in the 90s was a bubble and it had popped. There was a lack of content, the public lost interest, not enough resources being devoted to the industry, and hardware that was just too expensive with low fidelity, which just destroyed the industry. I wonder if there's a company back then that could have built a VR headset with the technology they had at the time, and it sold billions of units and became the next computing platform all the way back then. But no one could crack the code, and I guess we'll never know. The 2000s to me represent a lot of repetition. One of those companies that survived was Emagin Systems. They went on to make the VFX 3D. It was $1,800 with a controller, which was a 3D puck. The Cyberpuck was a joystick for games. Apparently, it took quite a while to get used to, but it was very natural to use in virtual worlds. It seemed similar to the Oculus VR and Gear VR controllers. It had a 380 by 337 per eye resolution with a massive 75Hz refresh rate and integrated headphones. It came with a link box. You can see all the connections here. To install it, use a computer and just installed a program that installed 2 utilities and drivers. You also had to calibrate the tracking sensors on the headset. According to a blog post by Roman Shepilov on IXBT Labs, the color rendering left a lot to be desired. The tracking wasn't very good either. I've read online it used an actual compass for tracking, hence why you would need to calibrate it at the start. It was also extremely exhausting to wear, with users being able to wear it for only 15 minutes at a time. Although watching movies was reportedly a good experience. There's lots of limited reviews on very old forums of the headset, hence the mixed reviews. In 2001, ZA Productions introduced the SAS Cube, the world's first PC-based cubic room. Located in France at the SAS library. Most people think the PSVR 1 was PlayStation's first delve into virtual reality, but it wasn't. Sony had been interested in VR for a long time. Ever since the PS1, they were working on R&D for years. Then, in 2002, they entered the virtual reality market with the PUD J5A. It was designed specifically for PlayStation 2 consoles. Games you could play were extremely limited, like Energy Air Force Airstrike. It was only released in Japan, and with such a limited release, the headset has since become a bit of a collector's item. Featuring a resolution of 827 by 228 per eye with a 25-degree field of view. The images were 3D and it even featured full head tracking. It came with about half a dozen actual games. There are quite a few videos of it online you can dig up. Sony didn't really market their headset, but it's insane how small and lightweight it was. It came at the cost of a 25-degree field of view, so immersion was limited. There was a porn-style game where you could view Japanese models in skimpy outfits and walk around in the room to see them from different angles. It became one of the rarest gaming peripherals ever, a super obscure Sony relic from Sony's first ventures into virtual reality. Released on January 1st, 2003 for $24,000, the Envis released their Envisor SX60 for $2,400. It actually had over double the pixels per eye as the Oculus DK1. It didn't come with 3DOF tracking in the headset. You needed to attach an IMU that adds the tracking. The company still exists today and creates high-resolution near-eye display systems designed for high fidelity. In 2005, we got the Emagin Z800 3D visor. It came with an 85Hz refresh rate and a 40-degree FOV. It also had 3DOF tracking.
It's got 2 OLED screens built into the headset so that you can see in 3 dimensions. And then it's also got head tracking built into it. And what's cool about it is that the screen is actually out here. You're seeing a very large view of the universe. And then as you move your head around, the entire scenery of the game moves with you. Last year they were just launching it. This year it's in production and you can purchase it. Totally changes the way you play your game.
Or a game from the desktop system, you would probably have some kind of HUD here right on the display, you know, like some kind of crosshairs. And then you would just aim by looking at things. Essentially, you're pretend that this here is kind of like a gun or something is always fixed to your view and moving around, but that's not really, again, you don't really want to do that. You have your body in the...
Founded in 1999 by Larry Brown and Mark Shapiro, Sensix is a company that deserves its own video. Their products are based on patented technology developed at Johns Hopkins University. One of those products was the 2006 Sensix PiSight with a massive 3200 by 1800 per eye resolution. It uses an array of 12 displays per eye you can see in this photo. It aimed to solve that problem of HMDs having shocking FOVs. Facebake's Labs came out with a wide HMD in 2007. It featured an FOV of 150 degrees with a single DVI output.
The thing that made it really cool though is right here, these special lenses. The Wide 5 gave you a field of view of close to 150 degrees, so somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 to 150 degrees. And it was an amazing field of view. Even today, the headsets seldom offer fields of view as large as this guy.
It costed around $35K at the time.
One of the really cool features of this guy is, if you look closely, you see this here. In order to keep the weight down, the frame around the display is actually made from carbon fiber.
The Wide 5 HMD uses OpenGL commands to set up the matrices for the left eye and right eye, both in peripheral and focus view. As well as the $35K price, you apparently just couldn't buy one. You'll need to make a custom order, which seemed to be hard to do anyway. And after working at Mark Bollis's lab, a young man called Parmalucky founded the company Oculus. If you want to continue the story of VR, I'd recommend watching my Every Oculus Headset Ever video. And as you all probably know, Apple announced their headset bringing VR or spatial computing into the mainstream. Thanks for watching the video. This was a very big project and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it.